So we kind of survived and we got along the same way anyone with 3 children under 3 would. It's just a big blur of nappies and laughter and sleepless nights and birthday parties, and then we had to very quickly start to go into the education system. So there are 3 consecutive school years. So once one hit nursery, it was just, and I think, as I've always found, I've spoken to lots of other mothers who feel the same, once your child hits the education system and you start measuring your time in terms, it speeds up, it goes twice the speed. So we were hurtling into education, and I was I had a little bit of an idea about attachment, and I kind of knew that you know, often people would say that, oh, he's a handful, and what a handful, oh, you've got your hands full. And that was kind of like, to go to different toddler groups, and that was their way of saying like, oh, you've got really naughty kids. They're really naughty. Why are they doing that? Why does he keep throwing that? Why is he not listening to you? And I think this is where the loneliness starts to creep in of parenting an extraordinary child. And I feel really strongly about it. My children know that they are extraordinary, and in its most basic term, it just means not ordinary, but it's a beautiful word as well. And they've got blonde hair, they've got blue eyes, they don't like peas, they're extraordinary, they're adopted. I've made it part of their foundation of who they are. And as they get older, the shrug it off a little bit when you say it to them, because it's compliments become a little bit uncomfortable at a certain age, the 11, 12, 13 now. But parenting extraordinary children can be a very, very lonely place. And it started when I look back, it started in the very early days. So there would be certain toddler groups that maybe didn't have the kindest mums there, who I would start and avoid. So we would drop that toddler group, we wouldn't do that. Soft play, where everyone, it was a brilliant, most mums can sit and have a cup of coffee and the kids can go and run off the energy. I started to realise very quickly that actually I couldn't really let them out of my sight, and I had to follow them everywhere. And unless I wanted to be wedged in some kind of soft play nightmare and physically stuck climbing into things, started to avoid those as well, because I would have them really hyper, and you would have other parents coming over saying they've just pushed my child, or so it was, you don't realise you're doing it, and you don't do it actively, but you start and withdraw. And it's survival. It is survival. And because you don't want to expose your children to negativity and to constantly getting into trouble. And then you go through the path of, well, it must be the way I'm doing it. I've got to be doing this wrong, because everyone else with children my age seems to be laughing and able to go out for tea and able to go to soft play and actually eat a meal there. And why can't I do it? What am I doing wrong? So then you start staying awake half of the night, ordering half of Amazon in parenting books, and thinking like, right, well, you would wake up the next day, right, I'm totally going to absolutely nail this, and by 10 o'clock it's just all falling apart. And it can be quite soul destroying, and it was. Nursery, we're managing nursery all right, and I've had a very open dialogue with education, with schools and nurseries from day one. And I question now, I don't know whether or not that was because my need was, I want them to like me children. I just want them to like me children. So I felt like going in kind of if they're forewarned about the kind of behaviours they might be going to see. And so I always had a brilliant relationship with them, and my children struggled just from the beginning, really. And what I know now, which I didn't know then, was they were just exhausted, and it just wasn't appropriate. It was too much to put them, to fit my extraordinary children into the ordinary route of our kind of education system. So my eldest son moved up to mainstream primary school, middle boy into nursery, and I was left with my little girl. And then it just feels like the blink of an eye, and that was it. They were all in primary school. And as we started to work through Key Stage 1, that's when things started to become a little bit difficult. And I was the parent who didn't have one walk of shame every day. I had 3. I would have 3 teachers. Can I just have a word? Can I just have a word? And that just crushes you, but also crushes your child, because, and I think I'm not ashamed to admit this, because it's anyone who says that this wouldn't be an issue for them isn't being entirely honest. One of the biggest problems for me was, oh my God, all the other mums are watching us. Like, what are they going to think? Like, and my children would come out of school and lunch bags would be thrown and rucksacks would be thrown, and they would try and run away. And it was like trying to herd mice to get them into the car. And it's, you question yourself so much. I'm thinking, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I just get them in? Surely they're tired. And what I understand now about the mind and the brain is, yeah, they were absolutely exhausted, but they couldn't even process how tired they were. So they just exploded the minute they seen me, and I'm their safe place. I am their absolute safe place where they can just explode. So they did every day times 3. Primary, all my children are out of primary education now, and primary education was very, very difficult. Primary schools are fantastic in being able to kind of cocoon your child and put measures in place, because it's so small, and they did everything they could, but I found I had to learn about it, and then to kind of help school understand about it, because my children had such complex needs that school were doing the absolute best they could, but they didn't know really what they were dealing with. And at that point, neither did we, which was the tricky bit. So as the years passed and their needs became greater, and it became apparent that if it wasn't kind of me dropping them off at school and picking them up, that was the difference between them managing all day and not. So it reached the point where I had to walk away from my career. There was just absolutely, I couldn't juggle the commute, I couldn't juggle my job. And that was probably where my health wobbled at that point, because my job, and at that point it was only 20 hours a week, that was my escape, that was my sanity. I absolutely loved it. I loved being able to get dressed properly for work, be clean, have clean clothes on, drink a full hot drink, talk to adults. I absolutely loved it, and I was really good at it. But when I faced with what I was dealing with, it was, in the end, it was a no-brainer, and it was possibly one of the best decisions I have ever made, and I've never looked back for a second. It was the thing to do. But I waited until I got poorly before I did it. I ran myself into the ground, which is one of my only regrets, that I didn't respect my health, my overall health, as much as I should have done. As a result of the stress of it all, my marriage broke down as well, and we had been together for 16, 17 years at that point. And that was, I think when you've adopted children, a marriage breaking down is the saddest thing for anyone. But when you've adopted children, it feels worse. The decision feels bigger, because you've kind of made a decision to make a difference to these children's lives and bring them in a secure environment and give them everything they need. And then to make the decision to smash that apart is the toughest decision of my entire life. But again, the absolute right thing to do, because everything calmed, everyone was able to cope with life in a totally different way when our dynamic changed. And that's all that happened, because we're still a family. Our dynamic is different now. We co-parent.